I'm joined now to talk about everything in the news. Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey joins us now. Governor, good to see you as always. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, Jake. Thank you.
So the Wall Street Journal broke the news this week that Special Counsel Robert Mueller has been using a grand jury in Washington, D.C. to investigate Russia's interference in the U.S. election and any possible collusion. This is how President Trump reacted. Take a listen.
They can't beat us at the voting booths. So they're trying to cheat you out of the future and the future that you want. They're trying to cheat you out of the leadership you want with a fake story that is demeaning to all of us.
You're a former U.S. attorney. You know Bob Mueller and James Comey, for that matter. Doesn't it trouble you to hear the president denigrate their integrity and the work that they're doing?
Listen, I don't think he was talking about Bob Mueller and Jim Comey there. I think he was talking about the coverage that he thinks has been unfair. But let's make clear, Jake, this is a normal step taken by a careful prosecutor who's doing a thorough investigation. And I think that's exactly what Bob Mueller is doing. You can't issue subpoenas without a grand jury. It's the grand jury that actually issues the subpoenas. And so I think Bob Mueller wanted a grand jury that was focused on this so he could issue subpoenas and then review the evidence. That's a typical thing to be done in any investigation. I did literally thousands of these as U.S. attorney in 7 years in New Jersey. And so I thought that the coverage about how monumental this was is just a fundamental misunderstanding of the way this process works. This is what a careful prosecutor does to do a thorough review of the case. I assume that's what Mr. Mueller is doing based on my experience with him, and let him do his work.
Grand juries are investigatory tools, as you point out. President Trump recently said that Bob Mueller would be crossing a red line if Mueller were to delve into his or his family's finances. CNN's reporting is that Bob Mueller is doing exactly that, looking into the finances of the president, his businesses, his family, his associates. As a former U.S. attorney, is it fair game to follow the money?
Well, listen, I think, Jake, this is part of the problem with the special counsel. And you'll recall that before it happened, I was saying you should be very cautious about this, and that I thought we had the professionals necessary already inside the Department of Justice to do this kind of investigation. Because special counsels at times historically have felt the need to produce something in return for their appointment. And so you're always concerned about that. In the end, though, Bob Mueller is a good man in my experience in dealing with him when he was director of the FBI and I was U.S. attorney. And I trust that he'll be very careful to try not to go on a fishing expedition. There's always a temptation to do that. I hope that that's not what he does. I hope the focus remains on what may have motivated any collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, if in fact any collusion happened at all. So far, as you know, there is absolutely no evidence of any collusion at all between the Trump campaign and the Russians. But that's what investigations are for. And I've said all along, let a professional prosecutor and his staff investigate it and let the chips fall where they may. I believe that the president is telling the truth, and as a result, I'm sure this will be fine for him. But that's what investigations are for. I did many of those in my years as a prosecutor.
One of the things that we know Bob Mueller has issued subpoenas about is that June 2016 meeting between members of the Trump campaign, Don Jr., Jared Kushner, Paul Manafort, and a number of Russians and individuals with ties to the Kremlin. This week, the White House confirmed that President Trump helped to write that initial misleading statement from Trump Jr. about his meeting with that Russian lawyer, a meeting that was kept hidden for a year. When asked about it, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said this. Take a listen.
The statement that Don Jr. issued is true. There's no inaccuracy in the statement. The president weighed in as any father would based on the limited information that he had.
Empirically, that initial statement was misleading. It didn't mention all the emails, the idea that this was sold to Don Jr. as the Russian government offering incriminating information on Hillary Clinton. Do you agree that any father would help his son withhold information in this way?
Well, I agreed with you up until the very last part of it, Jake. You're assuming that the president knew about that last piece that you talked about. I don't know that he knew that, and neither do you. But the fact of the matter is, I've said before, this meeting was ill-advised. This is not something that should have happened. I believe if they had reached out to Don McGahn, the campaign attorney, now the White House counsel, he would have told them that. And so I think that everybody in retrospect knows this is a bad idea. But let's not jump ahead of ourselves. We don't know that the president knew about those emails or about the content of those emails. And so we don't know what his own son told him about that meeting. So, my view on this is why we have people looking into it. It's not for us to make conclusions beforehand. It's to let Bob Mueller and his team do the investigation, and then let's have the facts come out. And I think everyone will be better served by that, including the people of the country who actually want the government to work and do something about fixing health care, reforming the tax system, rebuilding our infrastructure, all the things that the president talked about during the campaign. It's time to get to work.
Let's talk about one of the issues the president talked about during the campaign and this week. President Trump this week embracing a proposal to cut legal immigration in half within a decade. The bill would move the U.S. away from an immigration system based on family reunification and towards a system based on factors such as ability to speak English, education level, job skills. Do you support this legislation?
Well, I haven't seen the legislation, Jake. I don't know in detail about it except what I've read in the newspaper, so I try to be cautious about it. Listen, I think getting more skilled people into the country is a very good idea for our economy, especially in a tech economy. When I've spoken to leaders of the tech community across the country, they've said they need more highly skilled people than we have currently here in the U.S. to be able to fill those jobs. So I think that part of it is a good idea. The rest of it we should examine really closely. Now, there's some family unification that I favor, Jake. Because we want to make sure that we get those skilled people to come into our country. They need to bring their families with them. So we need to look at this and look at the details. Again, this is like responding to healthcare. It's a moving target. My view is we need to get more skilled people into this country. That part of it is a good idea. The family reunification portion of it, I want to take a closer look at that.
You're in charge of the President's Commission on Opioids and Drug Abuse. On Monday, you reported an interim report to the president, to the White House, and you asked for him to declare a national health emergency. Have you gotten any indication that the president is willing to do so?
We've gotten really good response from the White House and, quite frankly, from the public in terms of our recommendations. And I'm confident that the president will accept the recommendations of this commission. The fact is, it is a national health emergency, Jake. According to the CDC, 142 people a day are dying in America of drug overdoses. This means, Jake, that we have a 9/11 scale loss of life every 3 weeks. If that's not a national health emergency, I don't know what is. The fact is we've got to stop the suffering in this country, and we need to be aggressive about it. And that's why we're talking about increased treatment, increased medication-assisted treatment, making sure that we interdict fentanyl and some of these other drugs at the border as they come in and strengthen our ability to do that, and to work on education to try to prevent people from starting this before by educating their doctors. Do you know, Jake, that in 2015, doctors in this country wrote enough prescriptions for opioids so that every adult American in this country could be medicated fully for 3 weeks.
It's staggering.
It's outrageous.
Yeah.
And we have to stop it. We have to stop it. And 4 out of every 5 new heroin addicts start on prescription opioids. This is a problem that's not just starting on our street corners. Where it's really starting is in our doctors' offices and hospitals. And we urge the president to take these steps. He's taking this commission seriously, as we are. And we make some very aggressive recommendations. And I'm confident he'll adopt them.
On a lighter note, sir, the president's now on a 17-day vacation in the Garden State of New Jersey. Are there any plans for him to stop by the gubernatorial?
Where else would he go, Jake?
Is he going to stop by the gubernatorial beach house, is the question.
The president is welcome at the gubernatorial beach house anytime he wants. We would welcome him with open arms for him to come and take some time at the Jersey Shore, as is displayed by last year's over $44 billion in tourism dollars in New Jersey. There's lots of people coming to the Jersey Shore, Jake, as you know. I'd be happy to welcome him, but we're just happy that the president has decided of all the places he could go for some relaxation, at least a little bit, during August, that he's coming to the state of New Jersey. And we recommend that lots of other people who are watching, 4 weeks to go in the summer, come to the Jersey Shore. We're ready to take you.
Funnel cakes for everyone. Governor Christie, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. As a Philly guy, Jake, you know, nothing like the funnel cake at the Jersey Shore.
Love the Jersey Shore. Appreciate it.